Does it say, tell the director what they should be doing? You are not judging on what they should be doing. Oh, you should do this, you should do this. My suggestions are maybe add music. My suggestions are maybe dimming the lights instead of having blackouts. My suggestions are maybe you shouldn't do this. These are my suggestions. Now the difference between being a technical judge and being one of 3 acting judges, it's a math thing, 1 versus 3. This is just my opinion in this respect. But I can legitimately, I am qualified to judge on what is on the rubric. And I know that I'm qualified because I directed for, well, close to 100 plays. I taught for 32 years. Yes, I'm a costumer now, but I taught for 32 years. I do know, I've done a lot of plays. And I've dealt with lights, I've dealt with costumes, I've dealt with sound cues that didn't come on, whatever. But you're doing it now. And even if you are a first year, second year, fifth year director, you know what if it is, and the next words that I highlighted on all of mine is, did whatever, the lights, the sound, the costume and makeup, enhance the production. And you are qualified to say, yes, what this director did, what this production shows, as far as lights go, did or did not enhance the production. And here is why. You can do this. It is absolutely a wonderful way to watch a show. How many of you teach English? Yeah, right. How many of you use rubrics in your writing or your speeching? Right? Speeching is a verb. Poetic license, dramatic license. Excuse me, the old ladies are heckling. We use rubrics all the time. And if you look at the rubric, every time under superior, excellent, and good, superior has the word, it always does. It's appropriate used. It always does. Okay. The excellent segment says usually, almost always, usually, almost always. You are qualified to determine if something was usually or always, or under the good, occasionally, sometimes, occasionally, sometimes, occasionally. All right, if you look, and we'll get to the ballot in just a minute, but these first 4 criteria on the rubric are 40 points on the ballot. So, this is the math median, and believe it or not, I do have a teaching minor in mathematics. Yes, I do. I, for myself, assign 10 points to each of these categories. Just for myself, to help keep myself figuring out like maybe where a number would be. So I say sound is worth 10, set and props is worth 10, your makeup costumes is worth 10, and lights is worth 10. Okay? Now I can go across my rubric and for myself, and you determine what this is for you. I give 9, sometimes 8, 9, 10 points to superior, sometimes 6, 7, 8 points to excellent. You can see how I overlap there a little bit. And on the good, like 4, 5, 6, somewhere around in there. I rarely give a 0, and I don't think any of us do that as far as speech or one act or any other activity that we judge, because we know what it takes to get a bunch of kids up there. And the only way you get a 0 is if you don't show up at all. You know, you show up, you get something. So anyway, that's the way I do that. I read this rubric. Okay, the light cues always flow with the show. The lights enhance the mood of the show. when lights go off, when maybe there's a blackout in the middle of a show. Sometimes, as audience members, as judges, we go, ooh, are they done? If it holds on for a little bit longer, we go, oops, was there a mistake? Okay, but we're smart enough, and we know, okay, so allow the lights to come back on, and we don't know if that was a mistake, we don't know if that was planned, but we know that then for maybe yourself or myself moves it out of superior and into excellent. And all you did was watch the play and pay attention to the lights. You know when a spotlight is well used and it is following Annie as she is running across the stage. I'm not Annie and I don't run, okay? You know that a spotlight is well used when it does that. Did it enhance the show? God, yeah. Okay, but if the spot is up and down and sideways and all over the place, it's probably not much enhancement. It's probably not doing much for the overall production. You're smart enough to do that, to know that, to see that, and to write, because a whole lot of you just told me you were English people, English teachers, to write in such a way as to not be demeaning. Holy God, who's doing your spotlight? You might get into, you don't get to do oral critiques, so you won't know. But maybe sometime, in oral critique, they're going to tell the other judges, oh my gosh, our spotlight person was sick, and so now we've got Mary Martha who doesn't know anything. Well, you can't judge that because you're not in there. You can only judge, did it enhance the believability of the show? Was it well used? The spotlight needs to keep up, and you can do that without saying anything negative in terms of demeaning. That is never, ever, ever okay. Ever. Same thing with sound effects. Have you ever had a push-button sound effect that didn't come on? Oh God, it is hell on stage when you are waiting for that sound cue, for that whatever, and everybody knows. Just point it out. How does it work? How did your sound people, come to that? What happened? You don't even have to ask what happened. I noticed this, and I noticed that your sound cues could use a little bit better timing. Okay? Using the words of the rubric, just like you do in writing, just like you do in speech making, just like you do in anything else that has a rubric. I've had a lot of people tell me, and obviously I'm a costumer, I own a costume shop in Hastings, and a lot of schools do come to me and ask me to costume their shows or just ask me for advice. Well, I don't know how you can be the tech judge. You're just going to like anybody whose your costumes are up on stage. That's a crock of shit. And I am going to say the word. That is a crock. I can look at whatever is on the stage, whether they came out of my shop or not, and know whether or not they enhanced the believability of the character. So can you. Okay? Oh, you know what? They just wore blue jeans and white t-shirts. That's not costuming. Yes, it is. That is a director production choice. And you have a rubric in front of you that tells you how to evaluate that choice. Did it enhance? Did it detract? And maybe your problem is I couldn't tell one character from the next. It's a legitimate, technical comment. All right? So you can do this. If you are asked or offered this, the contract to be a tech judge, you can do it. All right. So Looking then at cooperation, if we go down a little bit to cooperation and organization. Schools, as you will know as directors, have the choice to set their stage with the front curtains closed. You cannot judge or judge against anything that's under the organizations they set up and took down in an organized manner. Sometimes, as directors, we want our sets to be a surprise. There's nothing wrong with that. You do, and you can, and you have to, because it will say on the ballot, which we'll get to in a moment, how long did it take them to set up. Once those curtains go closed, you have to assume that they are now setting up, and you would start your time piece. A director will come out and say, we're ready now. That means they're done setting up. You can hit the stop part of the stopwatch, and then you can record that time. It does not count against them one way or the other. Some schools have this cadre of parents that each one has a fully charged drill, 5 screws in their back pocket, and boom, those are in, and boom, those are done, and that is just a little beauty of a thing to see. Some schools have the 7th and 8th graders who so badly want to be in the 1 act but can't yet because they're 7th and 8th graders, and they're setting up the stage. They're setting up the set. Are they cooperative? Do they smile? Do they know their job? So as directors, when we were talking in that very last session with Kate and Becky about building a program and doing rehearsals, one of the rehearsals that I always did, not just one, but many, set up, take down, set up, take down, set up, take down, get it all the way off like it's coming out of the bus. How does it come out of the trailer? How does it come out of the bus? Set up, take down, set up, take down. You are not penalized, and nor can you as a tech judge penalize a school for taking too much time. There is no such thing as taking too much time, because we all come at it differently. But you can give hints. I strongly suggest that it seemed disorganized to maybe rehearse your setup and takedown. Okay? Those are still qualified judging statements. At cooperation and organization, following cooperation across, crew members are always friendly and respectful. And you can tell when someone's like, get out of my way, I've got the heavy thing. And then someone just goes, what am I supposed to be doing? Oh, this is cool. We're not done. We know that kid shouldn't probably be there. Okay? So, a kind statement on the ballot that says, if you don't have a job, let the crew do theirs. All right? Same thing with organization. They use their preset time efficiently. Again, there is time between each show. Usually one show ends and you have 15 minutes and the next show begins. That doesn't necessarily mean you have 15 minutes of setup. It doesn't mean that you can't use 15 minutes of setup. Okay? That's kind of that touchy part. Give them all the benefits of the doubt. Because we would want that for ourselves. If that's your kids up there, you would want them to have the benefit of the doubt. Some days, it's also the beginning of wrestling, so you know what? Our wrestler guy had a meet today, and he couldn't, he's our big heavy lifter, and now it's going to take 7th graders to lift that box. You know, it can happen. All right. Along with, if used, overall, the first 4. And of course, they get 10 points for cooperation and 10 points for organization. That is because those are 20 points on the ballot, so that's what I do. And that's what I do. And I look and see how it works. If you're not sure if you could do a tech judge job, and you are asked, or maybe you're having a festival with somebody, hey, can I practice being a tech judge? There's nothing wrong with practicing. We rehearse all the time. So, I am betting that as directors, you want the most qualified people judging, whether it's acting or tech. Let them practice your tech. Don't let them steal your ideas, though. You wouldn't want that. Does whatever, the lights, the sound, the makeup and costumes, the set, enhance the production? And the organization, you can look at it and say, hey, this did work, this doesn't work, you have too many people standing around. Okay, if you would bring up the, go back to the previous slide, and then there's a click on for understanding the ballot. And this is where all of that is. And you can see that under the top part, the criteria, the technicality. How many of you would say that you're okay on efficiency and organization, but are going to have a little bit of a problem, or you are frightened of the technicality judging? Does that frighten you off? Okay, good. It shouldn't. Because you got a roadmap. You have a roadmap. Okay, and you are going to make comments on this just as if you were making acting comments. All right? If you'll scroll up a little bit more, or down, I guess, sorry, down. Set up time and tear down time. Tear down time includes sweeping off the stage, leaving your space as good for the next person, team, as it was when you got it. Sometimes the host school will say, we'll sweep the stage. But if you have glitter or feathers, you better be prepared to get that off the stage for the next squad. Because glitter is slippery, and if Team A hasn't done their cleanup job well enough, then Team B is going to have a problem that is not of their making. Okay, so those are things to think about. Curiosity. How much time do I have? Because I do have to touch on this tricky part.
1:15.
Oh, that's right. This is not a 30, this is a 45. Okay. I mentioned before that you are the only technical judge. There is only one tech judge. Even at state, there is only one tech judge per class, per session. It's a lot of plays, just as if you were acting. Okay? But we still get to rank them first through whatever, 60 points to whatever. There are still superior, excellence, and good. There is still, and I use this little box right here for a reason for decision. This is why I ranked you the way that I ranked you. And it's only fair. Now maybe you as a director, it's just a tech ballot, we don't care. If the tech judge is touching, say, consistently on lighting, it is eventually going to very detrimentally, possibly, enhance or not enhance the production, the believability of the production, which is in effect going to take off some points of the acting ballot. Okay, those things are, and that would be up to other judges. As a tech judge, I never, ever, ever once talked to an acting judge to see how they did. What did they say? Any more than Judge A in acting is not talking to Judge B in acting, is not talking to Judge C in acting. Okay? You do get to render an individual decision. And your individual decision has to be based on the rubric. All right. Any questions so far before I get to that tricky part? Yes?
What's your logic reasoning if they don't use, have any life changes, or if you undo something they don't really do at all?
Okay, that's a good question. In case you didn't hear it, she said, what is my balance, what is my reasoning if someone really doesn't have lighting other than lights on, lights off? Because maybe that's all they have to practice with at home. Well, I cannot count it against them. And so I will probably go ahead and give them full points, but I will make a personal comment that says, maybe at this point, the lights could dim to show a change of time. Okay? So I might give hints or suggestions of what they could do, but I will not count against them. If my points come down to someone who used a lot of lights or whatever, and someone who did not anything other than on and off, it may or may not, because I am human, affect my overall decision. Because I am human. Now, some shows are truly lights are on, lights are off. And that might be not just a choice based on these are what I have to work with at home, but because that's what works for the show. And I can say, I love the fact that you didn't try to mess with lights. The lights came on, I watched all of the show, everything else, I could see your set, your levels looked great, you used your set, but your lights on, lights off did not affect your score whatsoever negatively. Again, that is a personal choice because we do not all have the same facilities when we rehearse, and then when we get into a grand theater, it's like, we've only rehearsed on off, we're only going to do on off. You do what's best for your students. You don't screw them up at the last minute. And your tech judge should not, I do not take that away from them. Same is true with costumes. Some people have a really great drama mama or two that can just crank costumes, and they're gorgeous and they're beautiful. Some people can afford to rent. Some can do like filler pieces or whatever. Is what I see and what you have chosen enhancing to the show. Period. Okay? And I might give suggestions. Again, because in speech we give suggestions. I suggest you take a step here. I suggest you make your thesis statement stronger. Okay? I suggest as an actor that maybe, or as an acting judge, that maybe you need to be turned more forward. You've got too much profile. Those are suggestions. Those are legitimate. And they can be legitimate within the rubric of things to say for technical. One thing I have noticed, if you are a director and you are hosting a contest, please give your technical judge a center spot. Do not stick them all the way over on the side because you're not going to see the same show. And as judges, we have learned we need to sit in the same spot so we can make across the board the same decision. Give your technical judge as good of a spot as you give your acting judges. And I did a lot of tech judging last year. And a couple of times they just had me sit way over to the side. And I said, is it okay if I move? And I did that at the beginning of the meet. Because, well, for one thing, if I'm a tech judge and I can see all the way backstage, I don't care what I'm judging, that's going to be distracting. But I want to be able to see what the lights are doing, what the sound is doing, how the costumes look or move, and how the set is working for you overall. So as directors, I would ask you, tournament directors, I would ask that you do that. All right. If you could go back to my very first, are there any other questions? I should ask that. Okay. Number 4 here is the trickiest part. You don't get a bathroom break unless you insist on it. The acting judges are finished at that 30-minute. They get up, they may or may not do a little bit more writing, they are waiting for their critique when it's their time to critique, or before or after they critique, they got time to go to the bathroom. The tech judge sits there and waits till that set is down. And a lot of times the next set's starting. I'm an old lady. I'm an old lady blacker. So the trickiest part is asking the director of the tournament to say, can you give me 5 minutes? Can you point me to an unused, unlined bathroom so I can have my own spot for a few minutes? Because you don't get it otherwise. Because you are there for setup. And they can't start setting up until you get back into your spot. So, you could really throw off a tournament like big time. I'm sorry, I needed lunch. You get lunch. You always get lunch. You just get a little less lunch. You get bathroom breaks, but you gotta kind of ask for them. And I know that sounds silly, but if you're a tournament director and you've got this sucker running right on time, like, you know what, my bladder does not work like no time's not. And I bet I'm not the only one. So that is the trickiest part, because everything else is something you already do. It's just a matter of committing it to words. I'm actually going to be finished now, unless there are any other, yes?
I want to make it, tournament directors, this was one of my pet peeves. And it happened.
I can't quite hear you.
It happened at State with me last year. We're not sure what, as directors, what your rules of your theater are, okay? If you have something, like at State, they don't want you to touch the curtains. And that was on my critique sheet, you touch the curtains. Well, I didn't know we couldn't touch the curtains, If you're hosting a tournament, put down the things that you want or don't want people to do in your theater, okay? And that's a suggestion for hosting people, because, I didn't even notice that they had microphones on, and all of a sudden we hit a microphone, and on my tech thing, legitimately she wrote, you hit the mic, and you touch the curtains. Well, I touch all curtains,
And that is actually part of, when you send out the information for your set, it's supposed to be there. What is available to your incoming visiting schools, whether it's district or state, obviously. But do you have a spotlight available? Are we expected to bring our own spotlights? Is there a sound system? How do we connect to it? Is it on a, we have to bring a thumb drive, we have to, whatever. So yes, make sure that you are a good host, is what it comes down to. All right? So whether you're hosting conference, district, festival, or whatever, everything that you, as a director who lives in that theater, gets to use, so does everybody else. So just say, we have this sound system available, this is what you need to bring. And that's a legitimate, that's a legitimate concern and a fair request.
That's an easy fix. Give the tech judge what he sent every one of
The school.
so that they know, that, okay, why is this many times? Where the curtains didn't close all the way. We weren't sure when they were coming, going or starting, but some of the one acts knew that. So there's a confusion.
Yes, working the, as she said, in case you couldn't hear, working the curtains. Let your tech judge know what is, we're going to start with only this much curtain, or our curtains only close this much, so that everybody is on the same page. you know, the ropes got stuck or whatever, to let everybody know that this is a technical problem beyond the capability or the problem of the school. And that's good for everybody to know. And it is, we are in the communications business. It's easily communicated.
So if you have a problem, I had an issue at a contest that the lighting person that knew how to run the board, she walked out. And this has happened in America. This was last years ago. Walked out, all the house lights were still on. And she left. We started the show with the house lights on. We had no choice. And then in the middle of the show, she comes in. So it really looked like my fault as a director, as a person, but you don't know that.
Right, and that's fair, she's right. You don't know it if someone just walks out, leaves the house lights on, whether you're ready to start. And that's where a tournament director, whether you are hosting in your own home site, whether you are hosting over at Central City, if you are hosting at Kearney High, even though Kearney High is not your home base alpha, or at the Merrimack or anywhere else, you have to have that discussion. You have to let people know this happened, it was not our fault, this was not part of our show. Yes?
If you're hosting a contest, making sure that an accurate lighting system, lighting program is shared with schools. There are different times, different places where you go into a school and they preset all their lights on their thing, which is fine, but then if you have specific areas you want, you have to hit the 1, the 9, the 17, and 32 all at the same time. Or on the other side, make sure whatever you send out has specific showing of if it's which way is upstage, which way is downstage, because one time the numbers were flipping backwards, so we had like 5 minutes to change all of our notes in our script.
And that is where he's saying that when one school adjusts all the light cues, sort of, and the next school comes in or they come back, if you are hosting, it is strongly recommended to have your own people right there in the light booth, and my school will send in our lighting person and say, okay, this is when I want, okay, this is now dim that one, and you've got time, you have that setup time, that's part of that organizational setup time to make that work. I'm not saying that it always works that way, because it doesn't. I can remember one time starting in the complete dark, and it's like, okay, that was not our fault, we'd like to start over. And we did, and you know, without penalty, so that was no big deal. But yeah, you do have to communicate. The host school has responsibilities, the visiting school has responsibilities, and hopefully you can get that together. Last one.
That reminds me of one we did. So the play starts and all of the alarms go off. Like, I mean, it was blaring and blaring. The audience is laughing. It was a serious play. And so we all looked at each other and said, start again. And of course, there's always that person in the background who they take that. Do we have the right to say? And the tech judge was like, yeah, but we told them that, the alarm went off.
Well, first of all, I would say the host school, as tournament director, stands up and says to everybody, those alarms going off were not part of the show. Them going off was, what does it say on the ballot, beyond the control of the performing school. The performing school, by the rules, has the right to begin again fresh. And then everybody is on the same page, but I put that on the host school. Okay. If you have any other questions, catch me later, but do not be afraid of getting a tech judge ballot. Practice, practice, practice. Thank you.